So you've also mentioned publicly that you had Corey Yuen as your mentor, and he had an influence on your early career and also your art. Maybe for the audience, you can tell us a little bit about who he is and how he influenced you.
Yes, Corey's a legend. He is one of the, I guess, pioneers or legends of the Hong Kong cinema, especially if you're aware that history of the Hong Kong cinema kind of has this great trademark of action films. And that's where Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee came from. So he's also one of the great directors in that period to come out of that. And so he actually grew up with Jackie Chan. So Jackie Chan and Corey had grew up in what's called Peking Opera School, which is almost like a circus, a martial arts circus, performing circus. And they learned from an early age how to flip, how to tumble, do martial arts, sing, dance. That's very much like all the nines on that one. So they learned how to do all these things from a very early age and converted that into filmmaking. So now this generation of Jackie Chan and Corey and also Sammo Hung and like just a legendary group of filmmakers who, were able to, basically make something out of that. And so Corey was a huge influence. He's actually, a family friend from high school. So that's how I got to know him. Just the fact that he was able to, incredibly busy, incredibly prolific filmmaker, to be able to sit down and watch my stupid videos and give me tips and actually tell me, what to fix and what to do and all those things. So just the fact of that example, that he made the time and space for me, I can't thank him enough. I mean, that's an incredible experience to have as a young person, or any person, to have. So that's the first and foremost. And particularly specifically filmmaking, yes, the stuff that you said, kind of breaking down fight sequences, understanding what an action scene is. An action scene is really a storytelling scene. It's really a drama scene. It's not about the moves, it's about what's going on with the characters. And that started kind of like opening my eyes in terms of what filmmaking was and what's engaging with an audience is. And really evaluating the importance of story first and foremost, because if you can't have good action if you don't have a good story. That's something that you would always say. And so you always want to look for the story first and then build the action around that.
Let's talk a little bit about your claim to fame, the film that has really put you on the map, The Paper Tigers.
I swear to be loyal to my brothers, to the very day I die.
So I really love the film. I think it's a must watch for anyone, particularly Asian American families. Can you talk a little bit about what was the inspiration for the film?
So I already had this idea that I was about these guys that were just trying to discover their mojo and get their groove back in a martial arts setting, just as an idea. And I just started really polishing that idea and started figuring out, what that meant thematically to me. Because like, if you asked inspiration, it was just the feeling of like being burnt out, not quite being in love with the things that you were passionate about once before. And what is that feeling? And I started just kind of like use that as fodder to kind of come up with the idea for The Paper Tigers, which is about these three martial artists who kind of like, go their separate ways, but they discover, the roots and the relationships with each other. So this is really just a story of rediscovery. And so that's kind of like what set it on its way for that.
So let me just understand what was going on over this 10-year period. Unless you were born wealthy or hit the lottery, which I'm pretty sure it didn't happen, you were still trying to make a living. And then you also were trying to raise money, and you were also trying to make the film. So you were essentially triple processing during this 10-year period. Is that correct?
Triple or quadruple or quintuple, whatever processing, it was a lot. I think, it was a lot of multitasking and also kind of planning. I think maybe that's kind of where the savviness of being a freelance filmmaker kind of came in. Is basically feast or famine. And so you have to like learn how to kind of earn and save and keep your money and make sure it's all kind of like there for you. But not knowing when the movie was going to get made, because anytime you got the green light, you better scramble and run and make it happen. So that's kind of it's almost like a 10-year holding pattern, but your engines are revving so hard and you're just like redlining and you're going out still hustling and trying to get the money. It's not much. Instead, if this is a holding pattern, I can't wait for the race, because it was like that type of pace. So we had to kind of like figure out how to get creative and figure out how to do this in a way that kind of made sense to the money folks that we were talking to, but also really move the ball forward for us. So I'll give a little bit of spoiler on the movie, but the first 10 minutes or the beginning portions of the film, you have the younger version of our heroes. It's set in the 80s and 90s, and you have that period piece essentially of this what they were like back in the golden years, if you will. And so for filmmaking, that was kind of our way in, because that meant we could shoot that portion of the film with the money that we had. We didn't have all the money, but we had some of the money in the bank, for example. Let's use some of that money to shoot parts of that film, and we could have it in the can, and so to speak, right? And then so when we can use that to find the rest of the money, we can shoot the adult versions or the older versions and have them come back. And so that was our way in. Like, it was just looking at the script and what options was presented to us. You can't do this to any movie, you know, and not all movies will be able to let you do that. But we just found a way to be able to say, what can we do now with the things that we can? So we were able to do that. We made a trailer out of that, exactly like you say. We turned it, that's what we actually pitched as a kind of our main asset in Kickstarter, to show this younger version and how like kick-ass these guys are, and let's finish out the rest of the movie. And then we went to pitch at Cannes. We were part of all these film incubators and labs, and we were able to pitch at the Cannes Film Festival, for example. And so it just opened all these doors just by allowing ourselves to shoot, you know, the first 10 pages and be able to like have something tangible, at least to show people. It wasn't vaporware. It wasn't just a script or an idea in my head. We actually had something, and we need you to help us finish. So that kind of changed our pitch. In a lot of ways, that was kind of like something that was able to pour oil for us to kind of change that paradigm. Because again, we were just hitting walls and getting nowhere fast for the longest. And it was just like, figure out how to do this. Now, the flip side was the risk. Like if we shot this film with some of the money we had and it didn't come to anything, then, you know, we just had a really expensive short film, or we would have been out of cash, or if we didn't have our Kickstarter. The thing about Kickstarter is it's a public crowdfunding campaign, and if you don't hit your goal, you don't get any of it. And so it could have been a very spectacular public crash and burn if we didn't hit our goal. And so it was all very much an all or nothing proposition by the time we got to that point, because it was like, you know, there's no way going back, because you can't ask for more money after. If everyone can Google you and see a Kickstarter failed, like that's as DOA as any, right? And so, you know, there's a lot of risks all involved, but again, you know, we just had to figure out a way to make it happen. So the entrepreneurship was like, you know, it's just that hustle, I guess, now you call it hustle and grind, or grind. And so that was just like something that was just, we had to figure out and find a way to make it happen.
Well, it's amazing determination, because I'm not sure a lot of people would have just stuck with it for 10 years. I think others might have thrown in the towel and said, okay, I got this great 10-minute short story, short film about these kids training, or, you know, worse off, just, hey, look, you know, the film never got made. Sorry.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, like, it's like, you see, there's a boneyard. There's a whole like boneyard of films that never got made or got development hell, as they say. So stuff that gets stuck, you know, that's something we never want to do. We didn't want to get stuck. So we didn't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good and all those things, and just make it happen. Get out there and do it. And so that whole self-starting was like, again, I'll trace it back to my immigrant family background. Like, that's what I saw. Like, they were willing to give up everything and sacrifice and do everything. So why am I holding back? You know, why suddenly hold back now? We made it this far. And so to me, I look at the big tapestry of the family tree and the family history. Like, you know, there's no stopping now. We're not giving up, and that's not an option.
Well, we're obviously the beneficiaries of your stubbornness or your resilience, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, at least someone's benefiting from it.
Exactly. What are you most proud of from that film? I've actually seen some blogs about some of the philosophical lessons from the film.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was part of your intent or not, but
it's all
this
intended.
This is why I
That's
say it's great. Yeah, exactly. Just take the credit.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a lot of great stuff in there for families. So that's why I think that I highly recommend it to Asian American families, or all families, to watch. But how do you think about the key lessons or takeaways from the film?
Yeah, I'll just, kind of do a summary of all the feelings because we went through all the emotions, in terms of releasing the film. So I'll start with a high. I think it was really great to be able to release a film and have a distribution deal and have like a theatrical release in the midst of COVID with, 50% theater capacity or 25% if even. And so for our distributor to kind of like believe in our film and want to put it out there in this landscape, was very, very moving because it's like they believe in the film, and then they're hustling in the same way that we had been hustling all the way up to now. So to have other supporters and your team be on the same page, that was great. The lows is kind of get that converse. I would say the lows is just the fact that we just haven't really had the opportunity to be able to really sit a proper crowd and watch this movie with a good audience, and because that at the end of the day is what we wanted to make the movie for an audience, to have a great Friday night, great Saturday night, and to laugh and cry with strangers in the dark. I mean, that to me is what movies are.
So you're clearly an example of the power of just hard work and sticking with it, particularly against all the odds. Are there things that you think would make the system a little easier for the other Bao Trans out there?
That's an interesting question. I think on the micro, for me, I do what I can to be able to pay it forward. So if anyone, I get a lot of introductions or people come up to me at the screenings and they ask me how, advice about filmmaking or anything like that. Any opportunity I have to be able to, keep the trauma or save other people from going through grief, I'm all for. So on the micro and the personal level, those are the things that I can do, and those are within my reach. On the bigger level, cultural sea changes and all those things, those are going to be, on all hands on deck type of effort. I think it's going to take, our whole community as Asian Americans or as film lovers or just as a community as a whole, really need to kind of like understand the economics of filmmaking is, like I said, it's a very expensive hobby, but the numbers don't often quite kind of return in the same way, or at least let's say the cut of the share doesn't always return in the same way. And so, for example, there's that kind of well-known story out there about Squid Game, the creator of Squid Game, who created this incredible, phenomenal success for Netflix. But according to the details of the original deal, it's like the creator was not that financially remunerated. It wasn't as lucrative as you would think for the creator of Squid Game, but it was very lucrative for Netflix. Let's put it that way. And so there's a lot of inequities around the movie business and kind of the studio and the creators and all those things. So I think those are kind of bigger questions, but that we all need to start asking and challenging ourselves to be able to do, and and getting more savvy audience, right? It's not just say, oh, your movie's on Netflix, you're a big hit, you must be a success now. It's like that doesn't always pan out because the numbers come down to the brass tacks with the numbers. Those aren't the deals that are being made right now. So I think that's something that we just need to all kind of start to understand, what the economics and the power of buying a movie ticket, but also the power of supporting creatives are also important as well.